we got some interesting developments coming out of Israel out here. So first of all, let's take a quick glance at the Gaza Strip. Number one, what I really want to talk about was the fact that the map seemingly hasn't really changed much as of yesterday. As we know, Israel has seemingly pivoted more towards clearing and trying to clear out the areas that it holds, although we saw that they have advanced further, sort of towards the south, towards this southern demarcation line out here, as well as this sort of salient coming out of Beit Hanun and towards Jabalia, which I'm assuming what they're going to try and do is either encircle Jabalia out here or Beit Lahia out here, further trying to just, just encircle and kind of cut off as many hot-spotted areas, as we know that this is very, very concentrated in terms of Israeli airstrikes, as we've seen. I mean, as you can just see right here, but also in terms of how they've been conducting this war. And the past few days and weeks, we've seen a lot of Israeli airstrikes going out here, so we can see that and predict that perhaps they're going to push further and maybe even encircle it. What I really want to talk about here is that Israel is alleging that they breached through this door. So if you've seen the clip of the Israeli drone going under Al Shifa Hospital and venturing into this tunnel, but there was I guess some doors out there that they had to breach. So what I think that this really does look like in line of what the Hamas tunnels seem to be, although some people are alleging that these tunnels built by Israel, of which, that's something I'm not necessarily sold on, considering, how would they have done that? I mean, people make all kinds of allegations and give very little evidence. So, you know, uh, don't believe obviously everything you see on the internet. So, just talking about this, I do believe that this is very well probably a um, tunnel built by Hamas and used by them as well, uh, under Al Shifa Hospital. And as we know, just in general, that a lot of northern Gaza is just completely covered in a tunnel network all throughout it. So, that's that. But looking at the rest of the Gaza Strip, we can see that there are more airstrikes going on all across it, and even more missile strikes going on outside of it by the Hamas militants, as well as, from what I understand, as other militants like Islamic Jihad out there. Yeah, see right here. So, as well as more hostilities going on in the West Bank, more clashes going on out there. And what I really want to talk about, which is really interesting, is the clashes between Hezbollah and Israel out here. And I predicted that it was going to downturn, considering Iran really didn't want to get involved. And the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei saying that he didn't want to get involved with this. He didn't want to get involved with Hamas because they didn't, give Iran any prior notice because of it. So I expected that in turn Hezbollah would not get involved anymore. But what we can see here, that on both sides there's seemingly uptick in hostilities. On either side, as we can see, ATGM attacks and mortar strikes, airstrikes by the IDF. So just talking about this in general, we know that this can really turn on a dime. Just this conflict on either side, on so many sides. So, what do we expect out of Hezbollah? I guess, validity, a downturn in some hostilities and then maybe an uptick. Who knows? But, that's really what's going on the ground. Let's take a look at some of the combat footage. So we got some interesting footage coming out of Gaza out here. What I really wanted to show is that in this clip we can see that this tank is seemingly point blank at this building out here, and it fires, as we can see right at it. And what I really want to talk about here is the seemingly demolition of so much of the infrastructure of Gaza City. And as we've talked about prior, like, when is this going to end, right? How many buildings need to be destroyed? How much of Gaza needs to be completely leveled for this to end? And that's not, like I said prior, that's not a jab at Israel. It's just a notion on both sides. How long are you going to fight, right? How long are you going to fight until this is over? But as I'm sure you've heard, there are deals being brokered from right now, from what I understand, a ceasefire deal that might last around 4 days, which will exchange not just hostages held by Hamas out there, but also some Palestinian prisoners that will be released. So in terms of that, it is hopefully, I'm hoping that, perhaps some kind of, I don't even know what you'd call it, a deal, a peace agreement could be brokered during that ceasefire. But I don't really have super high hopes for that. But I'm just hoping that this ceasefire kind of just gets put through, and people can be brought home, people can be saved, and less people have to suffer because of it. But other than that, this clip doesn't really show a whole lot other than from what we've already seen. Just you know, Israeli troops moving throughout buildings, and pretty dense areas being operated out here. What I also really want to talk about here is not just the equipment, but also this seemingly Hebrew writing that's on this bulldozer here. And I'm curious if anybody knows anything about Hebrew, and if you've seen this clip, if you know what that says right there, because I believe there's also a Star of David on there. So, I'm just curious as to what they would be writing on this bulldozer and why exactly. But other than that, that's really all I wanted to talk about Israel. We got a really interesting update coming out of Ukraine. So first of all, in the Serebianka forestry, albeit quite small, but Ukraine has seemingly gained back a tiny bit of territory out here, which is interesting because this is an area that we haven't really seen too much movement by Ukrainians, other than, of course, the Kharkiv offensive that happened, a year ago. But in terms of what this might amount to, perhaps Ukraine is going to try and push further into, the rest of uh, Kharkiv, maybe, or just all of Luhansk. Perhaps there would be a broader offensive trying to take back the rest of Kharkiv, and then, like I said, this northern Luhansk area. Who knows? But that'll be something interesting to continue to keep an eye on. And also in the Avdiivka area, south of Bakhmut, we can see that Russian forces have pushed a bit further towards this area, which seemingly is rather contested between the two, since they're both fighting over this area. So we'll see what this really amounts to. But other than that, that's all really the map updates we had for right now. Now, what really caught my attention in terms of the combat that's being reported out here are that the fact that they're reporting 33 combat engagements with Russian forces, which is about half of what we've been seeing the past few days. So what I'm assuming this is because is either, perhaps this is a downturn, as I had previously predicted, but, wrongly predicted, since recently Russians have been really stepping up their assaults all across the front line, or perhaps it is just a day of regrouping, considering perhaps the losses they've been receiving in Avdiivka. Even though a lot of the combat engagements have been concentrated around this area, um, and just that might be why. But other than that, there's a decent amount of shelling in Kherson. As we can see, this area hasn't really, as we previously talked about, been touched on too much. But other than that, that's everything that's really being reported out there. So we got a pretty interesting clip out here coming out of Donetsk, and as we can see, this is a concert, a Russian concert, which is, I believe, celebrating some kind of military holiday, like the holiday of missiles and Marines, something along those lines. And in this clip, we can see that there is, of course, a Russian performer, and during this concert, the lights go out, and it is reported that the reason why is because it was a Heimer strike on this place. So from what was reported, around 25 Russian soldiers were KIA and 100 were wounded. And what was also being reported is that one of the singers was also, I believe, KIA. So what I really wanted to say here was that, war is obviously very complicated in terms of when you know that the other side has, as we can see, military targets out here, and it's a very high military density, and it is in a war zone, right? Because I mean, in Ukraine's eyes, right, this is occupied territory, in the Donetsk region, and Russia knows this, so they would know that this would be considered a military target because, I mean, Russia has done the same thing too, right? Um, targeted Ukrainians during their own celebrations when they have had a high density of troops and officers in those areas during those celebrations or holidays. So, uh, even though you know that there are going to be civilians there, what really designates it as a target, right? What really designates this as a military target as opposed to, I don't know, what would be less than military other than civilian, right? So, I don't know. Perhaps someone can give me a bit of insight into how that's really perceived in terms of warfare. But yeah, just what I really want to talk about in this clip was just that it's interesting that that there's a clip like this taken from first person view of this strike. So we got an interesting clip out of Myanmar out here, which is taking place in an area where we haven't really talked about or even seen, which is of the southernmost region of Myanmar, to be exact, in Dawei, which I believe that's how it's pronounced. But what I really want to talk about here is that this is a hit and run, which is something that we haven't really seen since before Operation 1027. So, although it is sort of in line with some of the footage which we're starting to see again, but what I really want to talk about is that, this is an area of which is not really touched upon at all, but also is that the area this takes place in, and that they seem to traverse through what is a temple, maybe? I think that's what it is. I mean, I see a lot of, Buddhist statues in here, and it seems very, very elaborate and, in all honesty, quite beautiful. But it's an area that I really would not expect there to see such footage, in in what would be like what is such a grand and frankly incredible looking temple. So, anyways, um, a lot of this footage is blurred out, and I don't want to continue the rest of it because it's a bit I mean, the rest of this clip you don't really see anything more than just them firing their weapons, but I just really wanted to show it. Just seemingly the Myanmar anti-junta forces are expanding further. So here's a clip coming out of the Darfur area in Sudan. And, well, number one, what I really wanted to say is, of course, Toyota trucks. You got to see them. Also, what is going on in this clip, I was kind of confused about until I kind of really had to look into as to what was being reported from this clip. And from what is happening is these are RSF and allied tribesmen, and they are seemingly raiding or attacking a base out there, a Sudanese military base. And from what have some conflicting reports of the base being either already abandoned or whatever it was, but um, what I really wanted to say is that the reason why I kind of had to look into it is because this clip is kind of confusing, considering I really couldn't tell what was going on, and I'm going to be honest, I don't think a lot of the guys in here do either. I mean, it's kind of just indicative of a lot of the footage that we've seen in this area. Just, you know, mm, I mean, I don't know really how to call it. I don't know how to say it, but just a lot of, I guess, sloppiness. Let's call it that. A lot of sloppiness on either side, really. And a lot of the footage we've seen is, of course, of Sudanese military themselves, and we've already talked extensively about that in previous videos. But what I really wanted to say just here is, of course, what I seem to gather is that this is what I'm assuming to be the base, since this seems to be where the most people are going. But also there are a lot of people who are just kind of sitting around and shooting in the air, is what it seems to be. Um, I mean, I've never been in the military. I've never been in the army, and I've never fired a weapon. But from what I understand, that's not really how warfare should be conducted. But I don't know. Anyways, that's all I really kind of wanted to say about this clip. All right, well, that's all I really had to talk about here for today. So if there's any questions that you have or anything you want to mention for future updates, let me know in the comments. And other than that, thanks for watching.